I was an English major in undergrad and interested in poetry, and so I was always interested in not necessarily telling stories, but I was always interested in figurative language, and I think that that's exactly what art is it's a way of figuratively and poetically stating a concept. And so I feel that photography is visual poetry. So in some way, the captions are a way of challenging literary portraiture in the sense that it is not descriptive. The captions are ambiguous in some ways. So it's taking an idea that would be a portrait and subverting it into something that is not descriptive, which would in some way challenge portraiture at its very meaning. This is probably, I would say, I think it's my most early and successful work within this series. Crystal is special because she worked at Art Pace, and it was a place, that I would frequent, especially when I first got here. I was trying to learn about the city. And so we were talking about this gesture, which is this what's up, you know what I mean? Like when you got your chin up and you say what's up, and we were talking about kind of how, and I talk about this a lot in terms of language, how somebody can kind of raise their chin to you and it mean what's up, but you have to kind of speak that language because it can also look very intimidating in some ways. And so we were talking about that and working through that. And when we got to a point of tension, and that's really what I think is really interesting within any work of art, is where is the point of tension that keeps your interest? And so these are usually long conversations too, about 2 hours or so. So we were working, and she's an artist too, and I think that really helps too, is that when you have artists that understand the idea, the time, that accretion of building up of ideas and taking stuff away. As photographers, we're different. I'm not throwing paint at the wall and like doing a brush stroke. I'm actually dealing with the body as it moves. And actually, this was a fairly new piece, and this is my mother, actually. I remember lulling her to sleep, continuing to move and tweak and do things. It wasn't a long day for me, but it was definitely a long day for my mother. I also remember the quietness of that shoot, and I think it feels that way. With all of these, it conjures back memories, which is at the heart of the work, which is collective memory, because we're talking a certain language. How does your body speak a language, right? And so I think about the conversations, but I'm also thinking about the message and also its ambiguity as well. I would say I would have to start by saying that my work is conceptual. So there is a certain lighting technique that I use, certain lights that I use, but at the same time, a lot of this is dependent upon what concepts we're working with, and the form follows the concepts. For one thing, it's really thinking about power. I think when I think about love, I have to think about power, because for me, love is a power that endlessly is trying to redistribute itself, right? There's inherent power that we all have, and it's also dynamic. And so I'm always trying to redistribute that. And so the way that manifests itself within photography is I'm thinking about who makes decisions. I'm thinking about authorship or co-authorship. I'm thinking about what those depictions are, and I'm also thinking about shared experience, which is really important. Increasingly, I'm thinking about the studio as a gathering place and trying to upend my own power within the studio. So when I invite people in to gather, to commune in a way. And so I'm hoping that finds itself into the work. And so art making is a certain type of love making. It is the reason that we are so relaxed in that space. The reason that the images take on a certain vulnerability is because of the relationships and the interactions that we share within the studio. So increasingly, I'm just trying to embody, say, Bell Hooks' ideas in everything it is that I do and create and facilitate. And then hopefully those things find their way into the work. Again, it kind of goes back to that idea about concept. So if the concept is love, then the form has to follow, right? So there is no work that I'm gonna make that is hurtful or does not aspire to represent people in their fullness or dynamism. So that is the way that love and bell hooks acts as a spine to my work. With this work, I am interested in access. People always want to know what something is when they look at it. People go to the museum and they're frustrated by being confused in some way. And in some way, that is the exertion of power that the audience has on a given body of work. They always want access, but it is always the artist's right, and also the most gratifying part of art making is to express. And so with this work, any access that people feel like they have to the work is their own imagination, which is a way of giving ourselves to the artwork, which is something that we don't necessarily think we always do. And so I think that that is what is really important, is that anything that people receive from this work is something that they've given to the work. And I think that we should feel that way. We should have that understanding whenever we approach any art, which is a very human thing. And if we have any connections to it, then it is you kind of embracing that work and hopefully embracing the people in that work.